Yo, what's up guys? You got pokeaim here with the moveset video guide for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and this time we're going to be featuring Alcremie. Now, Alcremie is a pure fairy type and it has an excellent base 110 special attack stat and a great base 121 special defense stat. A pretty good speed tier at base 64, and you might be laughing at what I just said, but that's a good speed tier because it's faster than Pokemon, like bulky Pokemon, right? Hippowdon, Conkeldurr if they're running min speed, even Clefable if it ends up running min speed at any given point in this generation. So I actually really like that speed tier for a defensive fairy type. And it also has access to moves like Calm Mind and Recover. So Recover specifically is pretty cool because that sets it apart from a Pokemon like Hatterene, for instance, which is the Psychic and Fairy type. So it has two abilities. First one is Sweet Veil, and it means that this Pokemon and its allies cannot fall asleep, so by means of Yawn, Spore, or anything like that. And it has Aroma Veil, which I think is a little bit better, but it protects you from Attract, Disable, Encore, Heal, Block, Taunt, and Torment. I think Taunt and Encore are the really big ones that make it better for singles. So the first set we're going to be talking about is my personal favorite set for Alcremie, and it's gotten many sweeps for me, and that's Physically Defensive, Calm Mind, Recover with either Dazzling Gleam or Draining Kiss. Now, Dazzling Gleam obviously is the stronger fairy type attack. Unfortunately, it does not get Moonblast at this current point in time. Hopefully later it does, but you can use Draining Kiss because Draining Kiss, while it is weaker, it does recover 75% of the damage dealt, and because you're repeatedly boosting your special attack by using Calm Mind, it's a lot easier for you to recover there in a turn. Now the third move you have is Mystical Fire, and this is really good because it allows it to hit Steel types, which otherwise obviously they resist the Dazzling Gleam or the Draining Kiss. And then Recover is your final move. Now this set runs max HP, max defense, of course, because you are already boosting your special defense while you are going for Calm Mind. And even then, Mystical Fire also makes your opponent's special attack lower. So it's a lot better than, I think, running special defensive on a Calm Mind set. But Physically Defensive Alcremie, and it's pretty cool if your team is weak to dark types, if your team is weak to fighting types. If you just need a physical wall or sponge in the tier, maybe if you're playing like in UU, for instance, this will help you deal with Beware. This will help you deal with potentially Como. This can eat hits from Bolton if need be. So just a few Pokemon like that. Of course, in terms of teammates, while it does have Mystical Fire, you do still want to be careful about Pokemon like Assault Vest, Caparaja, which are running around. One thing to note, though, that if you G-Max Alcremie, because all these sets, they can either be just a regular Alcremie or they can be G-Max Alcremie, is that your move when you turn into the cake, G-Max Finale, does actually heal you 1/6 your max HP while you're attacking with a fairy type attack. So I think that's really cool. It's not only strong, but also being able to heal you in a turn is incredible, especially in a Pokemon that's so tough to take down. I want to compare this Pokemon to Reuniclus. Obviously, Reuniclus is a little bit better because of Magic Guard, so it doesn't go down to Poison, it doesn't go down to status and things like that, because it doesn't care about them due to Magic Guard or Hazards. But, I mean, in a metagame where very few Pokemon actually have Toxic, Alcremie is still super solid, especially for dealing with those fighting and dark types. The second set we have is taking advantage of its base 110 special attack stat, and again that decent speed tier. That's running a Choice Spec set. Now this set, for Choice Specs in particular, can be ran I think in OU or in UU. And I think it specifically can be ran in the OU tier just because it's a good check to Hydreigon, it's a good check to Mandibuzz in the tier, and Mystical Fire from a Choice Specs Alcremie hits very hard on Physically Defensive Ferrothorn. Energy Ball is good for Rotom, and you are faster than defensive Rotom. And then you have Psychic, and Psychic allows you to deal with Toxapex. So it has a really good mix of moves right here to be able to hit very relevant threats. Another cool thing, obviously, Mystical Fire helps with Age Slash as well. Still running Aroma Veil, and the EVs for this one are just max special attack, modest nature. We want to have the strongest damage output, whereas the rest is going into speed. And the reason the rest is going out speed is because you outspeed max speed Adamant Conkeldurr, or Jolly. You also outspeed defensive Rotom. You're faster than offensive modest Clefable. So it's really cool because, I mean, obviously that's like a Pokemon that I think you have to face competition with in terms of an offensive Life Orb user. And of course, Clefable won't be taking damage from Life Orb due to its magic guard. So obviously as a choice specs user, you want to be able to at least compete or have a niche over something like that. And I think the big thing is that speed tier. Though of course, if Clefable was running Timid, it is faster, but you can also run Timid too. Though I'd still run Modest just for the damage output. And again, that Energy Ball being able to hit Rotom is a big thing, while also still being able to deal with Pex and Pokemon along that side. Now, the next set we have is a Life Orb set, and this is taking advantage of the Recover that we already knew that Alcremie used. And also, again, it's good move pool. Dazzling Gleam, Mystical Fire, Recover, and Psychic. I think you desperately need to run Psychic on this. Poison types like Galarian Weezing in the UU tier, or of course Toxapex in the OU tier will otherwise shrug off your hits. Though if it is a physically defensive Weezing, it does not appreciate a Mystical Fire at all. Don't get me wrong, it definitely doesn't appreciate a Mystical Fire at all. But Recover allows you longevity, whereas Life Orb is boosting your power at the cost of some of your life. And this Pokemon can deal with Pokemon like Umbreon, Avalugg, Stalkors, things like that. Obviously, I'd run something with this that can deal with something like Pikamuku if you're running into stall. So definitely either a strong grass type or a decent electric type, or even something like Obstagoon, for instance, which doesn't care about status due to its guts and can knock it off and go facades from there. So those are all definitely valid options. But again, just max special attack, max speed. If you want to use an OU, you can still do the exact same thing, just with the freedom to actually mix up moves. And of course, if you Dynamax or Gigantamax with Alcremie, and you go for Psychic, you can get the max Mindstorm, so you get the Psychic Terrain on your side, boosting your Psychic. Max Flare, of course, will be setting up the Sun, which can make your attack stronger on Pokemon like Ferrothorn and Aegislash, or just Steel types in general. And then you can use the G-Max Finale and heal yourself while doing damage. This Pokemon becoming that cake also just looks hella cool. I don't know which Alcremie yo, let me know which Alcremie y'all like down below. I know that has nothing to do with competitive, but which one y'all like in terms of the colors? I saw, I think, a rainbow one. I don't know if that was fake or not, but it looked pretty cool. Next set we have is using it as a cleric for the team, and by that, basically, a lot of Pokemon right now lack Heal Bell, and there are very few. There's like, I don't think there's anything that exists right now with Heal Bell besides what's being released on Pokemon Home. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. And very few Pokemon actually have access to Aromatherapy. I mean, I know Eldegoss gets it, I'm pretty sure Vileplume still has it, a few others, maybe Roserade still gets it too. Just a few. So a cleric is something that a lot of defensive teams don't have, and obviously Alcremie being that fairy type, having those very key resist in dark and fighting, it has more resist, but those very key resist in dark and fighting can make it have a place on a more defensive or stall oriented teams, or even just be its own cleric as it's a setup sweeper. So again, we're running physically defensive because for the most part this Pokemon has great special defense. You don't need to run special defensive. Though the next set will be special defensive, we'll talk about it in a second. But you can use this as a makeshift for Uniclus as well. And what I mean by that is you can use Dazzling Gleam, Recover, and Aromatherapy. I think those are given. Aromatherapy obviously heals you and your teammates from status, so it's very important. Toxic Spikes, Toxic, Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave, things like that. Anything that obviously has status your team, this can basically be a cleric, and that's a Pokemon that just heals you and your teammates. So Aromatherapy provides that support. The obviously Dazzling Gleam and I think Recover are a given. You want your stab move, you want your longevity and Recover and leftovers. Last move can be either Calm Mind if you want to run a mono attacking Dazzling Gleam set. Now if you are running a mono attacking Dazzling Gleam set, you need heavy support in order to deal with those steel types, heavy support in order to deal with those poison types. So stack up on your psychic types, and DD could work with it, or use Pokemon like Obstagoon, which can weaken steel types anyway by knocking them off or close combating them with a guts boost in close combat. Fighting types like Como are good partners too, and they also appreciate, you know, you having a Pokemon that can take a hit from Como. And also Como shrugs off moves like Sludge Bomb as well, whereas Alcremie, just because of its bulletproof, and Alcremie can just tank hits too, coming out of Como. So again, the fairy type attacks for the most part Alcremie can tank coming out of Como. But you can also use Mystical Fire if you just want to use it without Calm Mind. You don't need to use setup. You can use Dazzling Gleam, Aromatherapy, Mystical Fire, and Recover. And Mystical Fire obviously means you require less support for steel types because you can actually damage them for a little bit of damage. And again, or do a little bit of damage on them. And again, that's up to you if you want to run it as a physically defensive cleric, sweeper, or just as a support Pokemon for the team. Last set we have is Special Defensive Alcremie, and again, this is something I think that can be used in lower tiers if you need a special wall, and I think it also really depends on the metagame, but one thing that's running around right now is Throat Spray Como, and this is something that could check that, especially if you Gigantamax, and you just have that max HP, max special defense with a calm nature for defense, and this just allows you to take those special hits better. And you have Dazzling Gleam, Aromatherapy, so you can still be a cleric for the team while being a special defensive wall, recover for that longevity alongside your leftovers, and then Mystical Fire, giving you that option to hit these steel types. So again, this depends on your team. If you need a special wall that is a fairy type that can deal with something like Como, and it can deal with Como a little bit better, well, way better than Umbreon can. Just because Umbreon is typically like the special wall outside of like Pikamuku for like bulkier base builds. Whereas Umbreon is still a good partner because it deals with something like Gengar decently well. So they pair really well together. Obviously, Alcremie takes on the fighting types and the dark types, things like that. Whereas, well, Umbreon doesn't care about dark types, but Umbreon can help it deal with the, the Gengar and the U tier. And it can also, Alcremie gets rid of Como for Umbreon. So they pair really well together. In terms of breaking this Pokemon, it is relatively slow. So I already mentioned Gengar is a pretty decent answer to it. Doesn't really have to fear anything besides Psychic from a Spec Set. However, if your Alcremie is already boosted to +2 and you Gigantamax, you can beat it 1v1. Definitely beat it 1v1. But in lower tiers, Bandit Beware, if it's running speed, does 2-hit KO physically defensive Alcremie with Double Edge, so be careful around that. And Caparaja, if it's running Assault Vest, it doesn't really care much about the moves. Watch out for Heavy Slam. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you guys today with Alcremie. I'll be showing this thing off later in a Showdown live. So thank you everybody for watching. Hope you guys all enjoyed or learned something. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, my friends.